Hello everybody, this is ManuS and welcome back to another Legends of Runeterra deck tech. Today I want to talk about Enduring SI and how I think the metagame will evolve and how this might be the next step in the evolution of the metagame and sort of the way to go. Again, basically. But before we do, you know the drill. Hit the subscribe button down below, turn on the notification icon to not miss out on future content, and let me introduce you to today's sponsor. Today's video is sponsored by NordVPN, one of the leading virtual private network providers out there. A virtual private network keeps your data secure and yourself anonymous while using the internet. NordVPN comes with super fast servers, allows you to unlock your favorite entertainment websites like Netflix. They provide a 30-day money-back guarantee. They also have an included cybersecurity suite, which acts as an ad blocker to boot. They don't lock any of your data, provide a 24/7 customer support, and you can use it on up to 6 simultaneous connections, so one account covers most or all of your electronic devices. And most importantly, they don't have any bandwidth limit, so you can use it non-stop without it getting throttled, which is particularly important for heavy users like us. It also won multiple awards and comes highly recommended by top technology experts. So if you're still surfing online without a VPN, now is the time to change that. Get NordVPN now, 70% off for a 3-year plan, including 1 month extra for free using the code ManuS or the personalized link in the description down below. And now on to today's content. Alright, so now that we got that out of the way, let's talk about the deck. So there's nothing too fancy here. We've had this deck before Endure got nerfed, pretty dominant on ladder, and it might be time for it to return. And the list is more or less the same as back then, but I made some fine-tunings and small improvements to the sort of stock list from back then that people are still sort of playing as the stock list. So I want to talk about these. So the 3 changes that I made basically is I replaced Omen Hawk with Hapless Aristocrat. Omen Hawk is a great card and really powerful, but it's just not that great in the deck. If you look at the units, most of the units, the buff from Omen Hawk is actually pretty inconsequential. Let's go through the units. Like on Butcher, it's decent. On Bark Beast is one of the better targets. Other Omen Hawks, it doesn't really do much. On Sentry, it's fine, but not a big deal. On Keeper, it's pretty meh. A lot of the time you want to sack it anyway. Like imagine turn 1 Omen Hawk, turn draw, you draw a Cursed Keeper, and then you want to Butcher it anyway, so the buff is wasted. Elise is one of the few targets that it's really good on. Blighted Caretaker, it's also pretty whatever. Not a big deal whether you have a 2-1 or a 3-2. Only matters against some 3-3s and 2-3s basically, but mostly it's like comparatively low impact to how much you can get out of an Omen Hawk in a lot of other decks, is my point with most of these things. Obviously +1/+1 always does something, but it's in a lot of spots and on a lot of boards pretty inconsequential in most ways, heavily diminishing the impact of Omen Hawk. Callista is one of the other cases where it is pretty impactful. 4 health and 3 health is a big difference against a lot of removal, and it's also a big difference against the more common fearsome blockers, which are often 3-2s and 3-3s. And also once leveled, turns her into a 6-5, making it even harder to deal with her with spells and stuff like that. Collector, sure, 3-5 is better than a 2-4, but it's kind of inconsequential. You often don't even attack with Collector, or only if he doesn't get blocked, because you really want to keep it healthy and hard to deal with for the opponent. And the difference between 4 and 5 health for removal is pretty marginal, so all in all, it's mostly a wasted buff here as well. And Endure, whether Endure is one bigger or not, is also pretty marginal relative to how the card works. So basically there are 2 great targets, the 2 champions, and 1 or 2 decent targets in Butcher and Bark Beast. Mostly Bark Beast, turning from a 3-3 into a 4-4 is similarly big as Elise and Callista getting buffed. But that's about it. So yeah, Omen Hawk just doesn't do enough, while Aristocrat is great. It's great for Callista, it's great for Caretaker. It allows you to run 3 Butcher and even have the great Aristocrat Butcher attack for 4 turn 1 opening, similar to Warning Shot Butcher in Bilgewater decks, which is amazing. Gives you additional fodder for your Deho Endure, because it's 2 units. It gives you additional spiders to level Elise, which is nice. It gives you more proactive glimpse fodder if you need to proactively glimpse, and more jump attack and jump block fodder for Collector. It's basically a better Haunted Relic in the deck, which brings me to the next thing. I think Haunted Relic is actually kind of a low impact trap. First of all, Kalista is just a very solid unit, and the deck is quite good at leveling her, and I think Haunted Relic, just to like make Kalista better and buff Endure a bit more, is pretty low impact basically. If you don't have a Kalista, Haunted Relic is not worth the investment of mana and a card, honestly. A lot of the time board space is an issue. Sometimes it can be neat with Collector, but only if you don't have that much board. And also going like turn 3 Kalista plus Relic means you only played a 1-drop and didn't play anything on 2 in a deck with a lot of turn 2 plays. Also not very likely to happen. And yeah, Endure is good enough with Relic, especially if you play Aristocrat over Omen Hawk, which adds additional units to the deck to make up for it to an extent. So yeah, my recommendation, don't play Haunted Relic. I think it's more of a cute situational card that more often is a bad card than a good card. While what I did is I cut the relics for a 3rd Butcher. Thanks to running Aristocrat, 3 Butcher is actually pretty great for Bark Beast, for Aristocrat explosive draws, and for more high roll turn 2 Keeper Butcher stuff. Also, Butcher can be decent sometimes for additional drains with Collector, although that's pretty marginal, or help level that Kalista pre-combat in a spot where otherwise you might not be able to. It also in a way helps a bit get into a bigger, quicker. The other thing I added was the 3rd Collector, because that's right, the 2 Haunted Relic list usually plays only 2 Collector, which is insane to me. Collector is very, very good, and sort of one of the other like big payoff cards for the deck other than Endure. Collector is what lets you sort of finish off the opponent in a bunch of games, and having 2 is even better, so only running 2 makes no sense to me. And cutting Relic lets you fit both of these. And yeah, those are like the 3 big changes basically. Cutting Relic, replacing Omen Hawk with Aristocrats, and adding the 3rd Butcher and the 3rd Collector. Another thing that I considered and tried as a direction more with like Mistrace and Racecaller, but weirdly enough didn't play as well as this because it kind of isn't as smooth and explosive. Like the thing is, Sentry on 2 is often still a decent substitute to like get your Butcher out, basically turning Sentry into like a 2-cost 3/2, which is like average, but it's better than a 2/1 sometimes, and also helps you like use your Sec stuff, buff your Dehu Endure and so on, and it also is fodder for Klimt sometimes, and for like Caretaker. The fact that it's a body that replaces itself has been pretty nice in the deck, and it seems kind of marginal and innocuous, but the deck kind of seemed to not work as well with a more like real card direction with Mistrace and Racecaller. Also, it seems hard to fit both. Like, sure, you could replace Sentry with Mistrace, but then how do you fit Racecaller? Do you like cut Fury and maybe a Butcher for 3 Racecaller? And Fury has been a decent card to add like some additional burst and like interaction counterplay potential against some of the stuff opponents can do, or keep Kalista alive. So it also has been pretty decent. So yeah, it seems like it should be a Mistrace Racecaller deck because 2 units for 4 mana is great. It's more bodies for Dehu Endure, but it seems like the deck is kind of just playing worse with them than without them. Not 100% sure, but I found myself being underwhelmed and going back to the more traditional version. But feel free to maybe try what I just brought up, like cutting the Sentries and Fury of the North and like 1 Butcher or 3 Mistrace and 3 Racecaller to try that, because then you're also like pretty good in the Allegiance case. Although actually with that setup, you almost want Omen Hawk again, because Omen Hawk on Mistrace suddenly is a lot better than on Sentry, and Omen Hawk on Racecaller is also pretty solid, making it a 5/4. But you kind of don't want it because the difference between Racecaller hitting and whiffing is pretty big. So in the end, you probably would want to just stick with 3 Dehu Endure to make your Mistrace your race caller hit as much as possible and stick with the aristocrats regardless. But yeah, I didn't get as far with those attempts as with the more traditional version, so feel free to try. So far I'm leaning towards the more traditional approach. Other than that, there's not too much to say here, I think. Even with nerfs to Keeper and Endure, the deck is quite good. Lots of strong stuff going on. I see some people only playing one Atrocity. Would not recommend this. The deck in some matchups heavily relies on Atrocity as one of its ways to finish the game. Sometimes you can't even get an attack in with They Who Endure, and Atrocity is the only way to connect with it. So it's one of the cards I fear the most when facing the deck, and yeah, 2 seems like the right number. Other than that, it's mostly just 3 offs. The differences in numbers I mentioned. I also know BBG for some reason runs Sejuani instead of Elise, which makes absolutely no sense to me. I have no idea why you would want to replace your best proactive 2-drop that also generates multiple bodies and has a super insane high roll when she levels, with a decent 6-drop unit in a deck that already has 3 7-drops and cares more about like sort of early game explosive tempo and board impact. The deck has some really sweet explosive draws. So yeah, that doesn't make any sense to me. Cannot recommend it. No idea why he likes it so much, but it's also not catching on. I don't see I don't see anyone else at a higher level taking on that approach. Most people that play the deck are usually on Elise, Kalista, and some people are trying like the Sejuani version, but it's very rare. And yeah, like I said, it doesn't make any sense to me. Makes the deck clunkier. The deck has 3 2-drops, one being a weak 2-drop unless you have the Butcher as well, and the other one being a pretty low impact 2-drop no matter what. So the 2-drop you usually want unless you have Butcher for your Keeper is basically Elise. So Elise is your primary 2-drop and Butcher your secondary 2-drop, and Sentry is the kind of turn 2 play you make if you have nothing else to do. So if you cut Elise for a 6-drop, you suddenly only have like a situational 2-drop and a like not even like worthwhile turn 2 play, and your deck suddenly becomes a lot less powerful in the early game at a late game gain that the deck doesn't even really need. So yeah, doesn't make any sense to me. Other than that, I don't think there's much to say in terms of card choices. The interesting thing, I guess, is that in the race version you also kind of pulled into potentials Arachnoid Sentry, Skidra type stuff, because it would make sense with the cards. But then the deck, that's when I found the deck definitely diverges too much from what has been tried and true, because then you basically would need to give up on like the Butcher stuff, and it's even kind of hard to fit Skidra on top of it anyway. Like I guess you would cut like Butcher and Keeper for like 3 Horror and 2 Skidra, and then I don't know, maybe cut an Aristocrat for the 3rd Skidra or something like that. I don't know. Something like that. But then you just become kind of this sort of fair mid-range deck that is neither like fast beatdown enough nor mid-range enough to do anything particularly well, even with Endure. And you have a lot of 2-drops that actually curve really poorly with Caretaker. That's the other thing. Like the deck has 6 2-drops and 1 1-drop that curve really well with a turn 3 Caretaker this way, while if you add Mistrace, you already take away 1 turn 2 play. That is a good Caretaker setup. And yeah, if you would add Horror, it gets even worse there, so that doesn't really work well. And also, if you add Skidra without cutting Caretaker or Kalista, suddenly you have way too many 3-drops, so that also doesn't really work. So I think it's basically only the Mistrace Racecaller package, if anything. So yeah, I think that's all I have to say on the deck list. I think the rest's pretty standard and self-explanatory. Like, I don't think any realistically commonly played version doesn't run any of the other cards in the numbers this deck does. If you still have any questions on some card choices on numbers that I didn't touch on, let me know in the comments down below. I guess I've seen people that run like Thresh Tryndamere instead of like Elise Kalista, but that's kind of a pretty old thing that has been tried and done that well, and I tried it too, and it's kind of underwhelming. And Kalista, since she got buffed, and Elise are just really good and kind of round out the turn 2 and turn 3 proactive option really well, while the deck has some more situational and reactive plays of Keeper and Caretaker. Caretaker wants you to be an attack token. Keeper wants you to be a tech token with Caretaker on 3, or having a Butcher and stuff like that. So having the like sort of just good units you can jam like Kalista and Elise on 2 or 3 if you don't have the situational circumstances to make the other cards what you want to be doing, is a good backup. So you usually have something that fits your situation. Alright, the appeal of the deck I think right now is that it actually fits really well into the metagame. It's a pretty good deck against the Rex decks, especially the Ezreal Twisted Fate decks that are dominating the top of Masters. It also seems pretty solid still against the Ashe Sejuani decks, although that matchup is a bit more rough, I think. It's one of the decks that is a bit better suited at beating you, but not sure how close the matchup is and if there's one side clearly favored and who it is. Honestly, I haven't played it that much, the matchup, so I didn't have a clear picture on that. But one of the main draws is this is one of the better decks that are overall pretty good, and particularly good against Ezreal Twisted Fate and other similar Rex-style decks. So it seems like the next step in the evolution of the metagame. We've also already seen the deck pop up again and rise in numbers. I'm facing it more and more, and I think the reason is what I mentioned, the Ezreal Twisted Fate thing, and we'll probably see the numbers and the performance increase. So I wanted to give it a try, and so far I quite liked it. Like, just the games that I tracked were like the last 26 games that I actively tracked my record in, and I am 17-9 over 26 games. So we're gonna round out the 30 tracked games with this deck tag. I'm currently in rank 25 again in the EU. Like, I haven't been climbing that much since I have been experimenting, so I only made enough LP usually to kind of maintain my rank in the like bouncing around between like 26 and 21. But if we win, we move. Like, if we win the first game, we move from 24 to 22 with one win, because people are very closely grouped between 21 and 25 right now. And we even have a good shot to break into the top 20 if we win all 4 games, for example. That might be enough to break into the top 20 even. But let's see how we're doing. Deck feels pretty good again. If you're looking for something new and something to like be ahead of the metagame a bit, give this a try. It seems pretty well positioned against a lot of the stuff that is going on again, despite the nerfs in the past. But I mean, other stuff has been nerfed too. We live in a different world, so makes sense that it can be good again. And from my experience so far, this seems to be the case. Alright, so I'll see you in a moment with 4 games in the top 24 of Masters on EU. So see you in a moment with the games coming right up.